Good morning, everyone. So today we are going to talk about deceptive projects. So let's get into it. What do I mean by deceptive projects? Well, the other day I was watching a few tutorials on some of the new JavaScript frameworks that were coming out. And I was just getting my bearings, watching a few videos of a few crash courses to kind of get the general feel for these frameworks and these tools and what they were meant to design to do and things of that nature. And I started realizing something that I thought was very scary. And let me tell you what. So let's go back, say a year or two, let's go even further back. Let's go back to 3-4 years ago when React became, React and Webpack and these sort of tools they really started to get a lot of traction and people started using them. And when they started getting to that really critical mass, that high popularity that made them what they are today, a lot of people started realizing that, wow, these tools are, there's a lot of things that we could make nicer. So maybe we should make a few projects or a few initiatives to make it more accessible to people. And that intention was very pure, very good, I think. One of those, like Create React app, for example, these sort of projects were geared towards getting a developer up and running with these tools, basically, so that you had a starting point. There's actually a little bit of a trend going on where a lot of people on GitHub, actually an old colleague of mine did this for Preact. That was pretty cool. He got a shout out from the creator of Preact for creating this template project that people could clone, basically, so they had a starting point for learning Preact. And I thought that was pretty cool. It was. And what I want you to take away here is that the design of these projects was to help developers learn the fun, to get started working with React and Webpack and these type of tools, so that they just had some way of, because there's a lot, honestly, there is a lot you have to kind of know to be able to do this sort of thing. I mean, if you don't understand everything about Webpack and React and you think Babel and all of these things are a little bit complicated, don't worry. I work with colleagues of mine who have been working as server-side developers for years, longer than I have been a front-end developer, and they don't understand it either. So don't feel bad about it. Anywho, these projects were geared towards helping people get productive quicker and kind of get an understanding of these very powerful but a little bit unrefined and inaccessible tools, right? That's 2 years ago, roughly. Today, I start seeing something a little bit different. And I see it I'm not going to mention exactly which project it was, but it's a fairly recent project which focuses on providing a platform for doing server-side React. I'm not going to, as I said, this is not about that specific project, but it's more about what it represents and the risk I see with that. Not to senior developers, because for me it was crystal clear. But I did read a little bit about the people who are using this tool. So the idea of this specific project was to provide you with a way of doing server-side rendered React with virtually a convention over config approach to doing switches between pages and so forth. You could basically create a server-side implementation of a React application with more than a few limitations. Let me tell you what I've seen so far. And this is not the only project. I see other projects that have the sort of same approach. These are the sort of projects that have the same sort of limitation that you see in that's even not fair to Ruby. Ruby on Rails it has a very there's different grades to this issue. And Ruby on Rails, you have to really push it until you get to that point, but you will get to that point. And it's kind of the same for Laravel in PHP, for example, where these frameworks, although they're geared towards solving certain problems for you. Web frameworks in general, it can be Spring in Java if you want, or .NET. All these frameworks, these web frameworks, are designed to do, for the most part, are to make you more. It's to make you more productive, so that you can get a web application up quicker and do things quicker, and you have all the tools you need to create traditional web applications, which is great. But what some developers don't realize is that there is a sweet spot for doing this. In other words, it's almost even the framework designers themselves. It kind of depends, because it's hard to tell if this is something they are consciously doing or if it's an unconscious thing. But when a web framework grows beyond a certain point, it becomes actually more tricky to do certain things in it. It will do the thing it is doing well, very well, and you will be very productive in doing that one thing. But it will be almost impossible for you to do more custom things that you actually may need to do over time, and that's very dangerous. Let me tell you why. What's dangerous about a web framework that is too niched on a certain thing is that if you, as a adopter of this framework, if you don't understand web development, if you don't understand the sort of requirements that can come your way, you cannot look at this tool and see that in the future, just maybe a few weeks or a few months down the road, you will start getting features that this framework cannot help you with. And then you are in a really big predicament, because the framework's design was for one thing, but because you don't understand what is going to cause issues further down the road, you have now invested in a platform that is not going to be able to solve the problems that you need. And by that time, it's most likely too late. And you're going to have to figure out some way of hacking things together in order to sustain the framework and this problem that it helped you solve originally, and at the same time figure out how to make the requirements that you have work for you. So take Ruby on Rails, for example, or Laravel. That's probably better. It is great. That framework is absolutely great for a lot of things. But when you need to do a little bit more custom things, you might actually find that it becomes very tricky for you to make it work in the framework, because the framework was never the way that you get the simplicity and all this productivity is to make reasonable assumptions as the framework designer. Spring Boot, for example, is a great example of that, where they, as seasoned veterans, have sat down and thought, all right, this is 99% of the time what people are doing. Let's build reasonable defaults so that they can get productive very quickly and standardize on these approaches. But what happens if you are in that 1%? What if you don't even have to start out that way? It might be the case that you evolve into being one of those 1%ers that have a use case that is outside of what the framework was designed to do. Now, depending on how convenient and niched, if you will, the framework is, the more risk or the less risk you're going to have. Ruby on Rails and Spring and such tools, such and Laravel to a degree as well, they are what I call, they're very close to the sweet spot of a framework that is powerful enough that it will be valuable for you to have the framework, but it's also not too niched so that you will find that you can't actually you can't actually build certain things with it because the framework is not designed to help you with it. And then you're kind of, what do you do, right? But I see that trend today, and that scares me a little bit. I have seen this tool I was talking to you about server-side React. I can see that I cannot take that framework to my boss and say, we are going to build our company on this platform. because this framework or this tool will not do that. But to a beginner, it seems plausible. It seems to be just another tool, just as equal to Express, for example, or something of that nature. But to somebody with a bit of experience, you can see that Express is a wildly different beast than this framework. And that's a little bit scary, because when you don't know any better, everything seems equal. I have talked to a few juniors who are very excited about this framework because it brings a lot of simplicity to this hype about server-side rendered React. And I agree, it's great if you have a very specific use case and you're not building something that is going to be production level software, something that a company is going to build their business on. It's great. You get started quickly, you get things running quickly. But the danger is that you may mistake this tool to be as powerful and as feature rich and as sustainable over time as something, as I said, as Express or Java EE or Spring or something like that. These sort of frameworks that people out in the professional world are actually using to build real level software. That's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. And it's a little bit misleading, I think. It's the same sort of thing, same sort of problem I see in other industries, say the protein powder or the fitness industry or whatever. Since everybody is saying the same thing and selling their product on the good parts about the product, it becomes very tricky for somebody without a lot of knowledge to figure out what's the real thing. Because the real thing is just as shiny and as alluring and as well promoted as the stuff that is absolute garbage. Garbage is a strong word, because it's not garbage. It's more that the intention of these tools is not to do the exact same thing as the other tools, but they are promoted, and so they're solving something in a way that makes it feel as if they are the same thing as something else. And they're not, which is a big problem, as I said. And this is a really tricky thing. It's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to make this channel more about reality, because I think there's a big danger when you sit down and promote a tool and you don't think about the people watching, that they may not understand what this tool is designed to do and what you should use it for and what you shouldn't be using it for. That's at least my 2 cents on the matter. And honestly, I don't know how to solve this. I know for a fact that a senior developer or a more experienced developer looking at this framework will be able to say, oh yeah, this is pretty cool, but I will never use it for like a business. But I don't know how to help a junior developer see that thing, because it requires experience to understand this. I suppose the only thing we can do as let's make a deal. Let's you and me make a deal. You as a junior will try your best to not get overexcited about a tool and always take a step back and think, all right, does this seem to be something that is going to be a sustainable thing? Unless, as I said, if you're just playing around with it, have fun, because it's great fun. But always, whenever you think about, all right, is this real level, production level software? Does this seem to be the sort of thing that real professionals use? If you're unsure, come and talk to somebody who is, or go and talk to somebody who is a real professional. Just ask them. Most people are like, go on Reddit or whatever. Just ask and let real software developers answer before you get into it too much. And then we, as the software developers, owe it to everybody else to be objective and say, yes, this is a good framework for this, and it's bad for this. To objectively say, use it for this thing, but don't use it for that thing. Let's make that deal. Just you and me. Have a great day.